Welcome to Movie Oubliette, the film review podcast for movies that most people have mercifully forgotten.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Conrad, and in each episode, we drag a forsaken film out of the oubliette,
Discuss it and judge it to decide whether it should be set free
or whether it should be thrown back and consigned to oblivion forever. We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie oubliette.
Halloween special. Greetings, listeners. Welcome to the spooky season. You're listening to Movie Oubliette, the hemisphere-hugging podcast with me, Dan, discovering banana blossom in Melbourne, Australia.
Ooh, and me, Conrad, constantly sweating over a hot editing suite in Cambridge, UK.
In this podcast, we peruse over genre films, horror, sci-fi, and fantasy because it's not love unless murder and resurrection is involved.
No, definitely not.
Hello, Conrad.
Hello, Dan.
How are you?
I'm not too bad. All I seem to do at the moment is edit and occasionally eat and sleep. But it's all for a good cause.
Yes. Upcoming video essay coming out for Halloween in particular. It's that time of the year. It's spooky season.
It is, yeah. And we have a very special treat, a co-production with Melinda from Retroblasting. And by now, you probably will have seen it. But if you haven't, head on over to our YouTube channel and check it out. And check out Retroblasting while you're there.
Yeah. Should we mention what the video is going to be about?
We should, yeah. Well, it's about Halloween sequels. So it's us doing the same sort of thing we did with Highlander 2, which is look at sequels and see which ones work and which ones don't work and try to figure out why. But we did it to the entire Halloween franchise, which was insane. Yeah. But we did it.
Yeah. I mean, luckily we have three people to sort of juggle that many movies. How many movies was it in total?
There are 13 movies in the franchise, so we looked at 12 sequels. Poor Melinda, I think she drew the short straw. She had to watch the Rob Zombie ones, which she didn't thank us for.
Well, I'm not a big fan of those ones, but yeah.
I don't think anybody is, but you never know.
I mean, I would have to say I was surprised how much I liked the Paul Rudd one, even though it's ridiculous and just like so far removed from the original premise. But I don't know. It was fun for me.
It was, yeah, especially watching two different versions of it in quick succession. But, yeah. So meanwhile, you're investigating Banana
Blossom. So it's just another vegan meat alternative. It's similar to like young jackfruit is one that people use a lot. Has a similar texture to like chicken or pulled pork. Banana Blossom is another one. But yeah, just, experimenting, that sort of thing. It's interesting. There's another one that I have yet to try. It's called Heart of Palm. And apparently it's got a similar texture to lobster. But I haven't tried that yet. So, yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah. Any pumpkin spice? No?
Pumpkin spice doesn't really exist in Australia. It's not
it doesn't exist in the UK either.
Yeah, it's not really
It seems to exist in everything in America from around August until Christmas, but it's not here at all.
I mean, it goes hand in hand with the whole spooky Halloween season and pumpkins and pumpkin carving, so that makes sense. But yeah, pumpkin in Australia and also in New Zealand is a very savoury food. Normally, we don't have pumpkin pie over here. It's not a sweet thing.
No, not here either.
Yeah. It's normally associated with either pumpkin soup or like roast pumpkin with like a Sunday roast or something like that.
Oh, right. Okay.
But,
no, only the soup here. That's the only thing that I've ever seen.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. There you go. Pumpkins.
So, Conrad, anything in the mailbag today?
Well, we're still hearing from people on Lair of the White Worm, on which Phil said, please tell Lars how much we all loved him on the latest episode, The Lair of the White Worm. Just a fantastic episode all round. Love the Patreon bonus content, which certainly makes for a mega-sode. please, everyone, check them out, which is really nice of Phil.
Yeah. There was a huge extended Moobly Awards. I think it went on for like 41 minutes or something. We talked about many things.
We did, yeah. So if you want extra Lars giggling, then head on over to Patreon, because that's where those goodies are.
Yeah. I think we mentioned the Hoff at one point.
Yes.
Yeah. It was pretty hilarious.
You can't speak to a German without asking them to justify their love of the Hoff.
Yes.
We also got a lovely letter from Robert, who said, "Hello, gentlemen. I wanted to drop you a line and say thank you. I found you a few weeks ago because I'm a big fan of Surge and thought I'd give your podcast a try. I'm not really a podcast person, but wow, I was not disappointed. I literally turn on an episode of yours now every time I have a down moment. I sing your theme tune around my house, much to the annoyance of my children, and I've even convinced my son to watch your next movie with me so that we can listen to the next episode together. You do a lot of good in the world."
Oh,
wow.
Wow. Truly honored. That's very flattering.
It is. It's lovely. Thank you, Rob, for getting in touch and letting us know that, because, you're beavering away at over a hot, sweaty editing desk, and you sometimes wonder to yourself, is anyone listening? And then you find out that you're having that impact on someone's life. It feels really good. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Did we get any comments about our last episode?
Well, yes, we heard a lot about Battle Beyond the Stars, which we covered with Michael French from Retroblasting in the last episode. We heard from Steve, who said, "I've discovered so many fantastic / terrible movies because of your Ace pod."
Yeah. I mean, they are fascinating, even if they are bad. So
yeah.
Regardless.
Yep. So have we, Steve. It's been really fun so far. So yeah, glad you're along for the ride. We also heard from Eddie, who said, "When I first saw this at a drive-in back in the 80s, it was part of a double feature with The Magnificent Seven. Very appropriate."
Wow. I mean, it's a very big change of pace, one to the other.
Yeah. I mean, if they'd made it a triple bill with Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai as well, that would have been something.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, a bit of a genre whiplash. And finally, we heard from Serge of Cold Crash Pictures.
Oh, hello, Serge.
Hello, Serge. And he said, "Gonna be real cheeky and say Battle Beyond the Stars is only the second most derivative Star Wars knockoff ever made. The first is Force Awakens."
Oh, yes.
Yep. "And sure, it's a shameless retread of some much better films, but I don't think it's terrible. People tried to make this good. What I'm saying is, it'd be 3 against 1 if I were one of the guests on this week's episode of Movie Oubliette." So there you go.
So there are people out there that like this film.
There were, so there you go. So let us know who's hashtag Team Surge.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I guess we ought to find a film to talk about this time.
One moment. All right. I'm outside today.
Oh.
I guess I have to dig a hole for the movie. Hang on.
Yeah.
This is hard work.
Is that toads I can hear?
I know, something like that. A bunch of amphibians, I think. And some sort of death beetle. All right, here it is. Coming back.
Oh, he's squatting in her like a toad.
All right.
Oh, God. Had to work for it this time.
I know. The thing we do.
Ridiculous. So what did you come back with?
Well, today we will be discussing the 1998 sort of horror drama rom-com film, Practical Magic.
Wow, I have never seen this before.
Yes.
Who is in it?
Well, I mean, it's directed by Griffin Dunn, and it stars Sandra Bullock, Nicole Kidman, Stockard Channing, Diane Wiest. Is it Wiest or West? I never know.
I always say Wiest.
Yeah, I say Wiest. Goran Viznik, and Aidan Quinn, and a very young Evan Rachel Wood.
Oh, wow. And what's it about?
Well, it's the 90s. Witches are all the rage. We follow the Owens family, two sisters, Sally and Gillian, and their sardonic aunts as they navigate modern life, love, and heartbreak. There are boys, marriage, and tragedy, but most of all, there is magic. Real magic. Oh, and murder, resurrection, and an exorcism. Will the sisters bond, overcome evil, accompanied by the original motion picture soundtrack available at your local music store now for only $24.95? Let's find out in this bewitching 90s rom-com, Practical Magic.
Ooh, spellbinding. I cannot wait.
Yes, and we will be joined by a guest today.
Thank goodness. Can't wait. After the break.
Yes.
We are very excited to welcome back today an actor, producer, writer, film photographer, and daily diarist, the wonderful Lotta Losten. Hello.
Hello. Great to be back.
It's great to have you back. How have you been?
Good. Yeah, well, it's been a pandemic since I saw you last, right?
Yes.
When was it? Was it early pandemic days?
It was, yes. I think it was early pandemic days, and I think you were saying that you were getting used to a new normal that wasn't a nice normal.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Now it's a new normal that still doesn't feel like a great normal, but at least it feels maybe a little bit more hopeful.
Yeah.
You've been to a big event recently, at least. You went to Comic-Con, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
How was that?
It was strange to be among so many people again. We had masks on and everybody had to test in the morning, but it still felt like a bit scary.
Okay.
And we did not get COVID, and we were sure. Like, if we don't get it at Comic-Con, I mean, where would we get it? We have never had it. We've dodged it all the way through. And David couldn't wear a mask when he was doing all the interviews and such, of course. So I was like, well, I'm wearing a mask, but if he gets it, I'm just delaying myself getting it, more or less.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was kind of wild. But then it was really lovely to be there again, because it did feel like some kind of normalcy that I didn't think I would have missed, but it was nice to see that was a thing again. It wasn't as much people there as last time, which was nice as well. So you could like walk around and not feel like you're bumping into people all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was fun. It's a wild, wild ride when you're there promoting a movie. And I just like followed along and and watched it.
Yeah. No, I was wondering what your experience of it was, because David, the lovely David F. Sandberg, did a fantastic vlog about it. And as a person who shares those traits of being an introverted extrovert, I recognized his exhaustion with that much being on stage. And it seemed without a break, really, the whole time. How was it for you?
I think when I'm there very much as with David. So it's not really about me, which is nice. But I am very attuned to David during that time. Like I see very clearly the moment when he's like, oh no, now he's so tired. And it's still like 4 hours left of this day or whatever. But then there's also like really fun moments during the day, like with the cast and crew. And yeah, it's just like a whirlwind. Like it's such a whirlwind. So even, both of us are so tired in the end, but clearly David is more tired than I am. I can get some kind of energy from it as well.
Yeah. Well, people seem to be very excited about the movie.
Yeah.
I certainly know that I'm looking forward to it, because Shazam was one of my favorite superhero movies for quite some time.
Yeah.
Because it had a big heart.
Yeah, this one does too. It's great. I've seen it. It's great.
Now, of course, the question that we asked last time, because you didn't know at the time, was whether you might be in it somewhere.
I am in it. Somewhere. Yeah. Yeah, I'm a new character. Different hairstyle, no glasses, different wardrobe, completely new. It worked for Superman. It works for me.
Well, that sounds great. And you don't get disintegrated this time?
Well, we'll see. No spoilers.
Well, we'll look out for you.
Yes.
Well, speaking of delicate balances of different tones, including magical and fantastical ones and drama, you've picked a fascinating film for us to talk about today, one that I had never seen. Dan, you remember it quite fondly from the 90s, I
Yeah,
think.
it was always on TV.
Right?
A lot, yeah.
Yeah.
It seemed to be always on TV. But, I mean, witches were all the rage in the 90s as well,
Yeah.
with, like, Sabrina the Teenage Witch and Charmed, and there were witches in Buffy as well, so this slots in quite nicely.
It does. Lotta, I guess the first question is, why did you pick this movie? What's your history with it?
Well, it's kind of funny because this is a movie that, to me, has gotten better. I remember watching it probably around the time when it came out, not in the cinema. So it must have been like when it was on TV, or maybe I rented it. I can't remember. But I remember the scene with Harry Nilsson's Coconut playing when they're dancing around the kitchen so fondly. I loved it so much.
Me too.
And then I remember thinking it just like went on, and they were never able to kill the guy, and like all of that felt like repeating itself. And then I watched it again. I think it was 2019 or 2020. And I was waiting for that moment when I was going to be starting to feel bored and start to feel like, oh, it's just like going on. And I was like, did not happen this time or that time? I was like, I actually thought it held up quite well. I mean, it's stupid, but it's also lovely. And I mean, it's Halloween, so we should have something that is spooky, right?
Oh,
and I
yeah.
think practical magic is great. I always loved witches. It's something about that kind of female empowerment that brings, where women have the power. I think that is such an enjoyable thing to watch, and I've always really loved that because there's nobody can mess with you if you're a witch, right?
Yeah. It does delve into the themes of, like what you said with witches and female empowerment. I do feel like the 90s did redefine the witch genre as being more about female empowerment, whereas previously witches were old hags.
Yeah.
They were ugly, casting spells and cackling, and
Yeah.
it was a different image of witches, whereas in the 90s, it was teenage witches, and it was all about like sister bonds and women being able to do things by themselves, helping each other out, but not needing a man to save the day or make things better. And I do feel like this movie really encapsulates that. The man doesn't save the day in this movie. It's all the women that get together, and it does hold up.
Yeah.
I do agree. It really does hold up.
Yeah.
The interesting thing I found about it was, if you try to apply the old Bechdel test to it, which is there a scene in which there are two women talking to each other and they are not talking about men? The film does hinge pretty much on the two sisters and their relationship with love and romance.
Yes.
And this curse that hangs over them ever since one of their ancestors was heartbroken and swore off men forever, and unfortunately swore off men for all of the people that came in the family afterwards. It feels like, for a film in which I think you could do the reverse Bechdel test, I don't think there is a scene in which two men have a conversation, much less two men have a conversation about something that isn't women.
Yeah.
And yet it still fails the Bechdel test, because I don't think the women ever talk about anything else other than love and men.
I think you're right.
Which is curious.
Yeah. There are a lot of women in it, though, which is
Yes.
kind of wonderful to see.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if it was marketed as a movie only for women, but it feels like it's just a big movie that happens to have mostly women in it and a couple of poor men.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do notice movies that are written, especially rom-coms, are written by men, focus on the men a lot, and the women are kind of like two-dimensional.
Yeah.
But movies written by women, it's the other way around. So the men are quite two-dimensional in this movie. They're kind of whittled down to core values. You've got your asshole boyfriend
Yeah.
that's just alcoholic and abusive, and then you've got the detective who was just the nicest man alive,
Yeah.
apparently.
Well, it's Aidan Quinn. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And then the first guy as well, who's just like a lovely husband. That's all
I know.
he is. We don't know
Yeah.
him at all.
No.
He's just a lovely husband. And then he dies.
you don't even know his name until after he's dead.
Yeah.
Right? What even was his name?
I
It
don't
was
remember.
just Dad.
I love rom-coms.
Same.
Growing up in the 90s, I watched a lot of action movies and a lot of rom-coms because I've got like a little sister.
Yeah.
So I watched a lot of rom-coms. And this movie, it's mainly a rom-com.
Yeah.
With witch elements.
Yeah.
Like, I recall it having more magic, but watching it now, it really doesn't have a lot of magic. And it's always kind of very subtle magic. You don't,
Yeah.
I mean, you see the coffee cup stirring by itself, but you don't see a lot of other things.
No, there's like hinting to it. Like when their
Yeah.
aunties are like giving the children muffins and they're like, oh, we're just doing toast. And then perfectly you see like 2 toast pop up of the toaster. And it's clear that they just did that by magic. And like that's how they use their magic in their everyday life.
Yeah.
Making toast appear.
That's right.
Yeah, but it does veer into dark territory. I read an interview with Akiva Goldsman, who is one of the credited screenwriters. It's based on a book by Alice Hoffman, who has since written 2 prequels and a sequel, so obviously turned into a bit of a franchise for her. But Akiva Goldsman said that Griffin Dunn, who's the director, his original cut was much more 50-50, that it was darker, that it had more of Nicole's possession, and when it came to the exorcism at the end, it was incredibly intense, and the women were screaming, and I think you see hints of it still there.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
In the overhead shot, for example, briefly you see how intense that sequence got, but it's all been pared back because it was too much for the tone of the movie. And I mean, having worked on movies that have balanced lots of potentially conflicting elements yourself, I mean, it's difficult to do that, and within the Hollywood studio system where they're keen to hit the biggest audience they can.
Yeah, I guess I can understand that if they wanted it to be a movie that is more of a rom-com that most people can go and see. I can understand that. We haven't really had that. Like for Shazam, the first Shazam, David even had the studio tell him to make it like go wild with the scares, like if you want to. So he,
Really?
yeah. Then it was just a matter of doing it in a way so it didn't like trip the PG-13 label.
Wow.
But they kind of encouraged him, which is great. And I think the first Shazam was so much a tribute to those kind of 80s, 90s movies where you got the whole package, like where it was scary and fun and for the whole family. That was such a huge inspiration for that one, I think.
Yeah.
Or I know. So I think maybe that's why the studio encouraged that as well. Maybe they weren't as clear with practical magic what people they would market it for, maybe.
Yeah, it's a tough balance because this movie is, rom-com. So you would want people that like romantic movies to go watch it, but you don't want it too scary.
Yeah.
Because then they would be put off by it. Because there are some scary scenes still in this movie that I remember as a child.
Yes.
Being pretty freaked out by it. Like the boyfriend coming back as that ghost, and like that bit where he shoves his hand in Aidan Quinn's heart, and it's pretty terrifying.
Yeah, I remember being very scared. So I was surprised when I saw it again that it's actually not that scary.
I mean,
I think
yeah.
I think Nicole Kidman really sells that exorcism kind of thing at the end. She's really great there. Yeah, I think she really made it feel very terrifying and high stakes there.
I think what makes this movie hold up really well is the connection between the 2 sisters.
Yeah.
Like, Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman, who we've actually covered on the podcast before. Sandra Bullock in The Vanishing and Nicole Kidman in Dead Calm. And their sort of connection and how sort of different they are. Like, it's quite relatable for people growing up in the 90s. They have sisters.
Yeah.
My sister really resonated with this movie, and my wife resonated with this movie. We watched it again, and she was smiling the entire time we were watching it because of how much she loved that movie. There is sort of similarities between Shazam and this movie in terms of like the importance of family.
Yeah, like they have each other even though they're not accepted in the town where they live. And I think the aunts have like accepted it. So they like, I love how they just like, when they're walking through the town center and everybody's like so angry with them and hates them so much. And they just have their style, their hair and their hats and everything. And just it kind of looks like they're enjoying it. While Nicole Kidman and Sandra Bullock's characters clearly feel very left out of it. And like, I think that's something that everybody can relate to, feeling not part of a group, feeling not part of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's interesting. The town accepts the Sandra Bullock character, Sally, as soon as she gets married and has children.
And she clearly leaves the magic behind. She becomes a normal person.
The town all loves her then, although she still doesn't make it to the top of the telephone tree.
But they don't love her. I don't think she's in the telephone tree at all before. No. So I think, which is that telephone tree is so funny to me. Because when they like introduce that idea, I'm like, this is just stupid. Like trying to tell us that her like biggest dream in life is to be on the telephone tree. Like that will prove it to her that she's part of the world. But then when it comes back at the end, it is so damn satisfying.
Yeah,
it is so satisfying when she's like, I'm starting the phone tree thing. It's so satisfying. I'm like, oh, I did not expect that. I did not expect that to come back. And I don't know why, because it's very stupid. It's very clearly like, what do we need that should come back in the end? But to me, it worked perfectly.
Yeah. There are a couple of things that come back. One is the telephone tree. The other one, I think, is the blood bond that the sisters have when they're younger.
And the ring, his ring that he wanted to mark her with comes back. We find out that he's killed a girl and marked her.
Yeah. He's a serial killer, the Angelov character. I think it is interesting to see Nicole Kidman in this role as an abused woman in a toxic relationship. It's a role that she would play again in Big Little Lies. The thing that I find interesting about this is the way that the film shows the resolution to that, which is not gathering all of the women together and getting angry. That actually seems to make the possession, which is sort of allegorical to the trauma that this toxic relationship has caused, that she still can't get rid of this guy, even though he's dead. He's been killed twice by that point. But so, it's not the women gathering together and getting sort of angry that changes it. It's actually the sisters' love.
Yeah, and I think it's also like, because then all the women are clasping their hands. So it's like the connection between all the women in the lineage, right? That's how I see it, at least. Like it's all the women in their family getting together and fighting it.
Yeah, and it's also the town ends up embracing them at the end as they float off the roof as witches. So it's kind of a resolution on all bases.
Yeah, because they saw that they weren't evil. And they needed their help.
Tonally, I did like how the film touched on darker themes, but it often felt like a Disney movie at times watching this movie. It's so wholesome. Especially Sandra Bullock's relationships are so wholesome. But yes, they do touch on some dark material as well.
I mean, if you described it to someone and said it's a movie in which two sisters, one of them gets into a toxic relationship with a serial killer and they murder him twice and bury him, but he comes back and possesses the sister and they have to form a coven and perform an exorcism, you'd think, wow, this is going to be dark. And somehow they just pile on the Alan Silvestri plinky plonky death becomes her chirpy gothic happy. I mean, it opens, tonally, the film just lays it out there, because this is the jolliest hanging I've ever seen in the opening title sequence.
Right.
Oh, it's very wholesome.
Yeah, it is. It's sort of, the sweeping strings and, she's, being hung for witchcraft. I don't know. For me, I was baffled. I was not sure that the mix of tones really worked. It felt like it was reaching for a sort of death becomes her vibe.
Maybe.
Which Alan Silvestri had worked on, a few years earlier. It was going for that sort of gothic satire, but it isn't a satire at all.
No. It takes itself very seriously, but it's funny. It's very funny. There's like lots of quotable things from it. I don't know. I didn't see it as death becomes her vibe. There's like Harry Potter visuals sometimes when they're like lighting candles, and it's just so beautiful. And in the beginning, they're sitting on the table wearing white wings and white dresses, and looks like Claire Danes in Romeo and Juliet. And it's like it wants to be beautiful and like it wants to be pretty and cozy, I think. Like when they're sitting in the garden having their lunch or brunch or whatever it is with their aunts the first time they've moved there. It's just so quirky and like fairy tale-y. I think fairy tale-y is like where it's like can be dark, but it can also be cute, lovely.
Yeah.
Talking about the music, wasn't another composer on this film before Alan Silvestri?
Yes. Michael Nyman composed the score. And when the film is struggling to find its tone in post-production and the studio is scared, one of the first things they always do is jettison the score because the score is so important in producing that tone. And it's also one of the things that's easiest to replace, I think, rather than reshooting the whole movie.
Sure.
Michael Nyman was asked what happened, and he said, quote, "What happened with Practical Magic was that I wrote the best score I think I've ever written for a film that engaged me not at all. It's a miracle how my relationship with Griffin Dunn and his encouragement to write a particular kind of score brought out a score from me that did all the things I wanted it to do. It had lots of irony, it was very sexy, it was humorous, it had some sleazy music, it had some scary music. But when it was shown to the head honcho at Warner Brothers, the film had a lot of problems as a film. The narrative didn't make sense. And Lorenzo de Bonaventura took one look at it and said, this score has got to go.
Wow.
Not realizing, of course, that I had 6 weeks to work on the score and they'd had 2 years to work on the film. And yet I was the whipping boy."
Wow.
Oh, that's harsh.
Yeah. So his score was thrown out literally at the 11th hour. In fact, the first issue of the soundtrack album, which you had to have in the 90s, you have to have a soundtrack album,
Yep.
had 2 cues of Michael Nyman on there. And you can still buy that. It's still out there, but then was swiftly replaced by a second edition that had a couple of cues from Alan Silvestri instead.
Right.
I mean, Michael Nyman, I mostly know from the Piano and Peter Greenaway films.
Sure.
I can see what that would have been. It would have been very different. It would have leaned much harder on the serious side of things, I think.
Yeah. Alan Silvestri's score, I mean, how long did he have to score it?
It can't have been
it
very
must have been
long.
a very short amount of time. It did seem very, I guess, on the nose, quirky. You've got quirky, you've got pit strings and quirky woodwind and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think it worked with a comedy. It was kind of verging on Tim Burton, like Danny Elfman type score at times, like very comical. But there were some cues I really liked. I liked the cue when they were younger and she was making that spell about finding her love, and he'll have 2 different colored eyes and he would like stars and stuff. I really enjoyed that cue because it was more kind of folky. There's like guitar and fiddle. I don't know. The soundtrack for this movie is very 90s at the same time. You've got the score, but you've also got a lot of songs.
Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of hit songs. But not kind of poppy, more country. So I guess, again, leaning into the witches and folk sonic palette. There's some Stevie Nicks in there, and I know Stevie Nicks and witchcraft go quite hand in hand often. She's been accused of being a witch numerous times by people, and she even cameoed in an American Horror Story season, Coven, which was all about witches. She cameos in that.
Yeah.
So I kind of liked the score, as 90s and cheesy as it was, with also the soundtrack and the songs as well.
Yeah.
I mean, one song in particular, Faith Hill,
This Kiss.
while they have the big passionate kiss.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very on the nose, isn't
Yeah,
it?
well, there was a song as well when she decided to like get up out of the bed that was like so literal. It was like people rely on you. You can make it. I don't remember who it was by, but I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
This is on point.
Yeah. I do feel like that was a very 90s thing as well, using sort of soundtrack songs to just tell you what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least that scene where Gillian drives all night to be with her sister because her husband's just died. She's not listening to Cyndi Lauper's I Drove All Night.
Wow.
So, but that was a beautiful scene.
Yeah, it's quite touching sometimes. Like that moment when Nicole Kidman's character wakes up Sandra Bullock and Sandra just looks at her and breaks apart. Like, I was so happy or something, she says.
Yeah.
It's like that sibling relationship felt very real in some parts, just because they were so different, but they still accepted each other the way they were.
Yeah, they have great chemistry on screen.
Yeah.
It's odd that they've never appeared in anything since.
Yeah.
Maybe they were too big after that.
Yeah.
You can't have 2 big women in the same movie anymore.
No. Well, oddly enough, I remember the complicated contractual back and forth that had to happen in order to get Cher, Susan Sarandon, and Michelle Pfeiffer in The Witches of Eastwick, oddly enough.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Was apparently nightmarish. All the things about which order their names were in and who had how many lines.
Wow.
Apparently it was hell because stars and their egos, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, they do that with men all the time. They have to just figure it out.
Yeah.
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 That's another one of my annoyances today, where it's like this one strong woman in the movie, then we can have 50 men. It's fine because we have one strong woman in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's why I love so many movies from the 80s and 90s, because they did have like lots of women in them, even though the themes weren't always great or like the morale of the story wasn't perfect. It was still like lovely to just see so many women in the movie without it being a movie for women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interestingly, a lot of the interview questions I noticed, they were always asking the women if they got on,
Yeah.
which I know would never happen if it was an all-male movie. There just seems to be this expectation that if you get too many women in one place at once, they will instantly start tearing into each other, and I don't know what that is.
Wow.
Yeah, that's sad.
It is.
I bet they had a great time.
Yet they seem to. I mean, the coconut scene seems very genuine.
It's delightful.
Yeah.
I love that scene. Like, I love how it turns then after a while. And it's like, they're so mean and hurtful to each other. And it starts to feel so weird and bad. And then you realize, oh, they're drinking Angelov's tequila or whatever. That's poisoned them.
Yeah. The women are fine until the influence of a very toxic man is introduced.
Yeah, and they talk about him like he's a vampire, right? They say that he's talking about love, that it's centuries-old love. And I also loved how Nicole Kidman says he will survive the curse because he's so powerful. And then that becomes the problem in itself, like that he survives, but he becomes the villain because he is too powerful.
Yeah. I was a little confused about what was happening. Like, I thought, oh, he's going to be reanimated. He's like a zombie, right? So he's going to rise up from his grave and just be a walking corpse. But then he's a ghost, and then he possesses Nicole Kidman.
Yeah.
So I was confused.
No, it feels like he survived the first thing, because when they try to get him back to life, they are supposed to do the needle in the eyes.
That's right.
But they don't even have time for that because he wakes up before that, which tells me that he's just too powerful to die, but like that part. And then they kill him again. And maybe that's when they kill him for real. But the ghost is still there. That the ghost is still haunting.
It's still so powerful, right?
Or like, it's not maybe it's not a ghost.
Yeah.
Like it must be like some kind of demon more. Yeah.
I'm assuming the original director's cut with the more darker elements would explain it a bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's likely because I just didn't understand the mechanics of what's happening and why he keeps coming back. I mean, eventually I just accepted it on an emotional level rather than a logical level. It just seemed to be like, this guy is just such a bad seed that he just keeps coming back. Even when you think Nicole's fine, all of a sudden she licks Sandra Bullock's face.
Yeah.
and he's back again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't fully understand the mechanics. I didn't understand why the aunts went away.
Yeah, I kind of like how they were like, even when the woman in town wanted them to make the person she loved fall in love with her or like leave his wife, they didn't want to do that, but they do it anyways. And they know it's not great, but they do it anyways. And it's like they are a little mischievous and a little playing by their own rules. And also when Sandra Bullock tells them not to tell the girls any nonsense, Diane Weiss is like, we would never tell them nonsense. But it's still like, it's because for them, it's not nonsense. It's like the real deal.
Yeah, it's real.
And then they're like, oh, they put the string around the daughters' necks because they were worried about them. They're like, it's for protection. And then they left them and were like, oh, you can take care of this.
Yeah.
It's like, I just accept them as being very weird and quirky and doing things their way. That's the way they've always done.
Yeah.
I do feel like it kind of harkens back to the old version of witches and them being just a bit conniving and causing problems.
Oh, for sure.
But I do like the sort of 3 generations of witches. So you've got the older generation, you've got the 2 sisters, and then you've got the 2 daughters as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good mix of versions of witches.
Yeah.
There's one scene that my wife pointed out that I didn't realize when one of the daughters casts a spell pretty much like you're going to get chicken pox.
Yeah.
Like a couple of scenes later, he actually does have chicken pox.
Yeah, it works.
It's great.
Now it's time for Random Trivia.
So, Dan, what fascinating piece of trivia did you whip up in your cauldron today?
Well, looking up Sandra Bullock's filmography, this is not her first sort of foray into magic or love potions, because she was in a movie in 1992 called Love Potion Number 9, in which she plays a scientist who accidentally helps invent a substance that makes her irresistible to anyone that hears her speak. So, interesting premise. Probably a very B-grade movie. I've never even heard of it. One other tiny piece of trivia. Apparently in that scene where the sisters get drunk with the aunts, they are actually drunk, apparently.
Yes, I think I've read that too.
Yeah. So Nicole
Yeah.
Kidman brought some really bad tequila and they all just got wasted. Because it does seem very genuine. Like it does.
It does.
It looks real.
So joyful until it's not joyful anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's our trivia.
Yes.
Do we believe the relationships?
The romantic relationships?
Yeah, so Aidan Quinn's character, Gary Hallett, I think it is.
Yes.
He shows up, I noted down, 50 minutes into a 96-minute movie. That's quite late for your main romantic interest.
Yeah.
They instantly have a connection, although it's not fully explained why until later you realize that he is the answer to the spell that was cast when Sally was very young. They just suddenly launch themselves at each other's faces in a motel room, and I didn't quite buy it, I have to admit.
It's like one of those things where it's like, it's magic. So it's the same when she's like, just get up from the garden and like run to the town and kisses the man who then becomes her first husband. We understand that it's the aunts that have done this, like put the spell on it. But it's so, I feel like that's weirder to me. Like the Aidan Quinn thing, I'm waiting for it to happen. I'm looking out for the one green and one blue eye, which we couldn't really see until like that moment in the hotel. And then the pancake flipping. And it's funny that like his favorite shape is a star. And then he's like, he has the star because he's a police. And it's just, okay, great. But I actually was kind of surprised by my emotions at the end when he's saying, well, I wished for you too. And Sandra Bullock just like, her face just like caves in with hurt that she's like, he's here, but it's not going to work out. I was surprised that I got tears in my eyes. I was like, oh, it caught me. So I think maybe it's because they have like planted the things early on, like her perfect man will be all of these things. So when he shows up, it's like, oh, it's the perfect man. He doesn't have to have any personality. He doesn't have to have any like be a character of his own. He's just like all the things that she's wanted.
Yeah.
And there he is.
I do believe it's because it's based on a book written by a woman. So she's written the perfect love interest for a woman. I find this happens all the time in movies where it's about the man and this perfect woman. Like Four Weddings and a Funeral, Andie MacDowell's character is not a character. She is
Wait. Don't. Four Weddings and a Funeral is one of my absolute favorite movies. And I keep saying it's almost a perfect movie. It is perfect. Yes, it is perfect. Okay, Andie MacDowell, maybe not, her character might not be super fleshed out, but I mean, I think it's so great. But yes, go on. Keep going.
I
do not want to hear any slander about Four Weddings and a Funeral.
You're on thin ice, Dan.
Okay, different example. Notting Hill.
Okay.
Julia Roberts' character is not really much of a character. There's not much depth to her character.
No.
And I feel like it's because it's written from the man's perspective and it's all about Hugh Grant in that movie.
Yeah.
Whereas in this movie, it's all about Sandra Bullock.
And it's actually more about the sisters.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it's more about their connection, and the male characters are very like two-dimensional, but I don't think it really matters. And yeah, you're right, Conrad. Them launching onto each other was a bit abrupt, but I don't know. I feel like that's such a 90s thing. there was always a bunch of launching and throwing each other against walls and having very aggressive, passionate kissing. It's 90s.
Yeah. But I really like your theory there about if it's written by a woman, the men aren't as interesting character-wise, because I do feel like this movie isn't about, I mean, it is a romantic comedy, but it is more about these sisters and it is more about their relationships. So the romance is like a secondary story, even though it might feel like the main story in it. It's not really. It is about the sisters in the end. And the relationship is more like the added little bonus, like at the end of some movies when they show, oh, they did get together, like after the credits, like, oh, and this is how it went 10 years later. Like, that's how the romance feels in this movie. It's more like a second thought. Like, yes, she's supposed to be happy, and she will be happy if she finds her perfect man. But the story, the arc is mostly just about the sisters, I think.
Exactly.
You're absolutely right.
I did like the detail as well when they first talk to each other, how she says to the Gillian character that I can't lie.
Yeah, I love that too. Yeah.
And she doesn't lie. So everything she says to Aidan Quinn is the truth.
Yeah.
But it's how she's saying it that comes across as like, oh, he won't believe her. So he asks her, did you kill this man? And she said, oh, yeah.
A couple of times.
Which is it's true.
Yeah. Did you bury him? Like, not in this house? Or
exactly. There's really clever dialogue in that scene.
Yeah, and it was kind of funny to see Sandra when she's struggling in the kitchen when Sally is talking to Jilly and she's saying, I can't lie. And the police comes in and she's like struggling with it. She's really struggling with getting words out because she knows I will fall into a trap any minute now. And she's just blurting stuff out. And it's kind of funny.
Yeah. And Nicole's mouthing to her, what is wrong with you? It's nice to see Sandra and Nicole in a funny role. I mean, it reminds you from when she was in Speed, for example, that the reason that she shot to superstardom was because she was so funny and charming and had great comic timing.
Yeah.
You kind of forget that because she tends to be associated with Oscar bait roles now, much more heavy-hitting things.
Right, I mean...
She did a rom-com recently, didn't she?
It's The Lost City. Not her greatest work. I think she's just very relatable because she never plays the perfect character. She's always a bit clumsy and, stumbles over her words. So that's really relatable and also funny.
Yeah, she's wearing glasses in the beginning, which is like, oh, she's a nerd.
Yeah.
So funny. It's so funny how they do that. It's the same. She looks the same in the beginning of this movie when she's an adult as she does in Miss Congeniality in the beginning when they're trying to make her look like a nerd. She has like messy hair and glasses, and like that's enough to ugly down Sandra Bullock. Yeah, she's so pretty. Like you can't hide that.
I mean, again, another 90s thing. We've got like in movies like She's All That, just shove them in overalls and put some glasses on them, and they're ugly. Apparently. Yeah. So we've talked about how this movie has aged really well, but when it came out, not great reception.
No. So box office of 68.3 million on a 75 million budget. It was regarded as a failure. Director Griffin Dunn, who I mostly know as a very fine and very funny actor, principally from American Werewolf in London, where he played the rotting best friend. He says he has never had an opportunity to direct a major studio movie since.
Wow.
That it was widely regarded as a disaster. And yet it was the number one film when it opened in October 98. It narrowly outgrossed Bride of Chucky that week, was knocked off the top spot the following week by Pleasantville, and then shuffled down again by Vampires, The Waterboy, The Siege, and then, ironically, a re-release of The Wizard of Oz. But it was in theatres, apparently. It was in release for 63 weeks.
Okay.
It's a long sort of slow burn.
Yeah.
I think it's gained a cult following pretty much in the same way that Hocus Pocus did.
Yeah, being played every Halloween, I guess. I'm really surprised this movie did so badly.
Yeah, and it has like 6 point something on IMDb, right?
Yeah.
But on Rotten Tomatoes, it's like 21 or something.
Wow.
Like really bad, which surprised me. Yeah, I see it in rotation now, like friends of mine and like posts about watching it as a fun 90s movie thing. So it seems to be making a cult kind of comeback.
Yeah.
And maybe it is like because it actually holds up weirdly. It does like talk about women being in relationship with bad men and how you can help each other to get out of it, and how women have to rely on each other and not rely on men, which is maybe also why the men characters aren't as fleshed out, because it isn't about how, even though like it doesn't pass the Bechdel test, it's not about the men. It is about like their relationship and them having to help each other out more.
Yeah.
To survive the evil men, which is funny.
Yeah.
Coming to you live from the movie Oubliette Theatre, it's the prestigious Mobley Awards.
Hey, it's the Movie Awards. It's where we present our favorite potion-altering moments in a number of evil spirit vanquishing categories.
Best quote.
I have a few. I like Nicole Kidman says, "We've been worshipping each other like bats," when she's talking about Angela. And I was like, what is that? What does that mean? Does bat worship each other? Is that a thing that I didn't know?
Yeah.
That was great.
I'm not
I
sure.
wondered that. How do bats worship each other?
Yeah. Yeah, it was like it was a truth. And then it's when they're heisting Angela up onto the table, and Jilly says, "Watch his balls," and then Sandra says, "You watch them." What was like? So weird. What was the point?
Oh, I mean, that's a very sibling retort, though, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of very, very funny dialogue in this movie. I do like it when Sally leaves to help Gillian and she's asking the aunts to take care of her daughters. And they say they'll take them to the solstice celebration, which Sally responds, "Fine, but I don't want them dancing under the full moon." And then one of the aunts replies, "Of course not, dear. The nudity is entirely optional."
As you will remember.
Yeah, and then they come back and they have danced nude under the full moon. So it's like, okay.
Best hair or costume.
I mean, the lady who works at Sally's store with the waffle hair, I think is wonderful. But I also just love the Diana Stockard Channing's fantastic outfits all through it. It's great costume design on that.
Yeah. I mean, it's also very 90s as well, with Nicole Kidman and a lot of like spaghetti strap tops and dresses. She's got like a velvet, like a moss green velvet dress at one point. Velvet was very popular in the 90s. But there's one outfit I want to mention. It's the sapphire blue Asian silk inspired pajamas that Sally wears when she's younger. A lot of sort of Asian influence on clothes in the 90s, with like a No Doubt as well, and also in the movie Hackers there's a scene at the end where Angelina Jolie also wears a silk number. But of course now, straight up cultural appropriation, that would never happen, but in the 90s very popular.
Yeah, that's very true. For me, I do love the witch costumes that they wear at the end of the movie, especially the very wide-brimmed hats with dark blue sequins as a trim on them, which catches the moonlight occasionally, which I thought was beautiful. And their red and white striped Wicked Witch of the West socks that they have on.
Yeah.
I thought that was a lovely touch.
Yeah.
Most 90s moment.
This is was almost in my favorite quote part. It's when they have done the whole telephone chain thing and the neighbors show up and one woman is saying, "Is this okay?" And she's holding up a mini handheld vacuum cleaner.
Oh, yes.
Instead of, because she doesn't have a broom. And I was like, oh, that's so 90s. Like, at least in Sweden, like it was all of a sudden everybody had those handheld vacuum cleaners for tables, and like they were only good for tables, really. And then a few years went by, and now nobody has them anymore. It was so stupid. And I was waiting when they were standing in the circle with the brooms. I was waiting for it to be like the last person to be the vacuum, but it wasn't. She had
she had to have the broom.
Got to borrow a broom.
Witchcraft hasn't modernized that much.
No.
That vacuum in New Zealand, it's called a dust buster. So everyone had a dust buster in New Zealand. But But yeah, they were useless for anything else because the suction power was just like non-existent, and the battery life was like non-existent. Always had to put it on the charger. Yeah, no one has them now.
No.
Favorite scene?
Mine is Midnight Margaritas. I think before I only liked it because it's joyful. The music is great. I have actually looked up the music and started listening to Harry Nilsson's Coconut after watching this movie the first time. Like that's been a song that I really love ever since I saw this the first time. But this time, I also really loved that transition when they're sitting around the table, they're drinking. It's clear that this is how it always goes, sitting around the table, having fun, telling each other stories, maybe saying truthful things about each other, but it's always with love. And this time it's not with love. This time it becomes like really toxic and hurtful.
Yeah.
And I kind of was surprised by how great it was made to surprise me and to catch me. And like I was part of that whole ride of the confusion of it and feeling the hurt of it. And then, he's still here. He's still around.
Yeah.
I thought that was great.
Yeah.
I do also remember that from when I watched it as a child. Like that scene really stuck in my brain. Like it is such a fun scene. In terms of like technical, really good scene. The driving scene.
Yeah.
When Nicole is driving back. When Gillian is driving back to see Sally, and the fact that she's in real time, but the background's in this ultra time lapse, like it's going day night. It's really well done.
Yeah, I love
it's almost
that.
like music video vibes, but it really worked to sort of portray the passing of time.
Yeah, I thought that was beautiful too.
Yeah.
Most cliche moment.
Mine was something we talked about on Ginger Snaps.
Oh, yes.
Which is the redhead party girl. She's dangerous. She's fiery.
Redheads are
She's
fiery,
unpredictable.
yes.
Whereas her sister, who's a brunette, is the glasses-wearing geek who's the straight-laced one that could get married. And I particularly wanted to raise this one with you with us, Lotta, because yes, you are a red-haired lady yourself. How do you feel about this portrayal?
I've
on
never
film?
understood it because it's like either we're geeks, like band geeks, like in American Pie,
Yes.
or we're this like seductress evil people. I have never really understood it actually. I think Ariel is the is the one that I growing up was like, oh, she's kind, oh, she's cool,
Yeah.
she has red hair.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a bit weird. I think.
Yeah, it is a trope for sure. There's a lot of typecasting with redheads.
Yes.
It's the fire, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess so.
Best special effect.
Goran's ghost coming to life. It's very bad, but I kind of enjoy it when he comes. When Angela rises from Nicole Kidman's body. It's just very bad, but I don't think it works. Like I feel like that's where I can feel the time has passed since this movie was made. Very clearly, because when he's walking around the room there, he just looks like a flat surface that they've drained of saturation. Like that's
Right.
kind of it. I mean, it's funny, so I laughed at it and I kind of liked it.
Yeah.
It's also stupid.
I like his eyes,
I do like his
particularly
eyes.
the way that they shine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the moonlight.
It's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of creepy. Griffin Dunn says that the look of the ghost was inspired by the daguerreotypes of the dead that were taken by Victorians
okay.
as a memoriam.
Wow.
I mean, I like that a lot. I collect those.
Yeah.
I collect old daguerreotypes.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yeah, strangers, but not. I haven't found any of those from a person who's dead. But I like that old kind of photography.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a pretty amazing type of photography. Copper plates soaked in silver iodide and exposed to mercury fumes.
Oof.
So, yeah, probably not a process you would attempt now.
There are people who are doing it, and it's fantastic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know a singer that I think is great, Alayla Diane. She one of her album covers I think is made like that.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay.
That's amazing.
Favorite sound effect.
I have the toad that's throwing up the ring. Because it like the toad just looked like it was sitting there, but the sound effect was of this like really bad throwing up sound. Didn't really match at all. But they needed to have that sound to show that he was throwing it up.
Yes.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Mine is a silly one. It's just the moment when Sally asks her daughter if she can see the kazoo that she's been furiously playing at the breakfast table, and when she hands it over to her, she just immediately throws it out of the window. And as she does it, you just hear this little sad kazoo note going downwards.
Oh, right.
That's great.
I love it.
Yeah.
Most funniest moment.
When they bring him back to life. I think it's just so funny.
Yeah.
When they have whipped cream on his chest, they making like the star, the pentagram, and then when he wakes up, it's like, I want you to be my wife. I want you to be my wife, and it's almost like Borat level, my wife. Some parts of it.
Yes, my wife.
My wife. I want you to be my wife. It's great. It's great. But it's just like that whole part when they're trying to bring him back is like comedic. How they don't know what to do. They're looking it up at the same time as they're doing it, and she's so scared. It's like, oh, should we poke it through his eye? Like that's ew. It just feels like something they're not at all prepared for, and that makes it so much fun that they're trying to revive a person from the dead.
Yeah.
It's a fun scene. My favorite is the phone tree name drawing session, just because it's so funny when Gillian walks in and all the women start gossiping about her, and she slaps somebody psychically in the face.
Yeah, that's right.
And then says, that wasn't me to Sally. And then finally the name tree is revealed, and at the top of the tree is Sally for the first time ever, and it's on every page as they're going through. And at that point Gillian says, that was me.
Yeah.
But it was a very quick fire and very funny, and all of the women are really funny in that scene. And I thought I would love to see have more of this dynamic going on in the movie.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's our Mooblies.
Yes.
Hi, this is Tom Woodruff Jr., and you're listening to movie Oubliette.
Final verdict time. Should Practical Magic from 1998 be released from its 6 feet undergrave and be adored by the masses, or should it be pummeled with a cast iron frying pan and thrown back into the oubliette to be forgotten forever? Lotta, Practical Magic, a big favorite of yours growing up. Is it still a favorite of yours now?
I mean, it's become more of a favorite. It's weird. I kind of didn't like all of it growing up, but now I think I like it more. So yes, let it be. Let it free. Yeah, let it ride.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
I really agree with that. I think it's gotten better over time. I don't think I really understood the dynamics as a child watching it, or a teenager, and because of the characters as well. So a lot of witch movies in the 90s either had children as the main characters and like old cackling witches, or the witches were teenagers, and it was always a high school setting. Whereas this, they're in their 20s, they're past high school, they're working. It's a very different take on the genre, and still sort of redefining it as female empowerment. I think it really holds up, and it does work as just going into it as a rom-com as well. Like, it's just a really good rom-com. And I don't know, the male characters are two-dimensional, but it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all.
It's kind of makes it better in my in my book. It kind of makes it better. Let's do it like that sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So compliment.
Well, for me, I honestly was confused by this. I wasn't sure whether it worked or not, and I was a bit baffled to begin with, because 20 minutes went by and it just felt like it was a music video, and we hadn't really had a substantive conversation between two people. And the main love interest wasn't introduced for an hour, and I didn't understand the mechanics of what the bad guy was doing and why he kept cropping back up again. And I didn't understand the tone either, what it was going for. So it was kind of lost on me the first time I watched it, and it didn't really improve with the second. So maybe I need to come back to it in sort of 10 years' time, and maybe it will have mellowed for me. I'm ambivalent, I'm open-minded. You've kind of convinced me of its merits. Certainly it throws up a lot of interesting topics for what appears to be such a slight movie. And there's nothing sort of bad about it. I mean, it's everybody in there is doing a great job. It looks beautiful, and it's very well performed by an amazing cast. So, yeah, I don't know. On the off chance it's good, I'll let it go.
Right. Well, fair enough. I mean, I feel like we have the majority here, Lotta. So
you do,
yeah.
So let's set it free.
Great.
Let's let it jump off the roof. Off you go.
I want you to be my wife.
It's been great talking to you about this film. Thanks so much for being with us again.
Thank you. It was great. It was so fun.
How can people follow you and find out what you're doing?
Well, I think I'm mostly active on Instagram, and it's just my name, Lotta Losten. It's LOTTALOSTEN. It's a hard name. I'm on Twitter as well, but that's probably the easiest. Oh, and watch the horror shorts that I did with my husband, David Sandberg, on the YouTube channel Pony Smasher.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, they're all amazing, but don't watch them alone at night.
Or do.
It is spooky season after all.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Any upcoming spooky movies that you can talk about, maybe?
Nothing that I can talk about.
Okay.
We have a bunch of stuff that is non-talkable yet, but yeah.
Things to look forward to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen your names attached to some projects that have a title and nothing else.
Exactly. That's about all that. Yeah, we have a couple of horror movies with Netflix that has been announced. Blow and Unsound. Yeah.
Well, with the two of you involved, I know they'll both be amazing, so I'm looking forward to them already.
Yeah, me too.
Yes. And if you want to follow us, we are Movie Oubliette everywhere: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit. And you can also email us at movie.oubliette@gmail.com.
Yes, like Rob. We always love to hear from you. And if you want to support the show, head on over to Patreon, where for as little as $1, you can nominate and vote on films for us to cover in future episodes and get access to extended portions of the show. And for $5, you get access to our special, exclusive monthly minisodes and extended portions of our interviews with special guests.
Yes. We also have merchandise at Redbubble, anything you could ever want. And please watch our video essay on YouTube about the Halloween sequels and why they didn't quite work as well as the original. But, we're open to debate.
We are. Always get in touch and tell us what you think. We love to hear from you.
Yes. And if you haven't already, give us a rating and review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to our podcasts. It does help us a lot. And share the love as well. Share us around like our new listeners.
Yes.
Okay, Conrad, what are we going to be doing next episode?
Well, in our next episode, we are still in the 90s, you'll be pleased to hear, but we are shifting genres from magic to cyberpunk thriller and covering the 1995 sci-fi directed by Catherine Bigelow, Strange Days.
Oh, yes. I haven't seen this movie since my early 20s. So,
no.
Really interested to revisit.
Yes, me too. So, Ralph Fiennes, Angela Bassett, Juliette Lewis, Tom Sizemore, Vincent D'Onofrio in a film directed by Catherine Bigelow. Yeah. I'm intrigued.
I really do like how a lot of big directors, for some reason, always start off with genre films, like very strange genre films as well. So,
yeah. All I remember about this one was they were recording people's experience on Sony mini discs.
Oh, yes. That future technology.
Indeed. So can't wait for that. And we will be joined by a special guest for that episode too.
Yes. So many guests, Conrad.
So many guests, but none as fine as today's. Lotta, it's been great having you with us again.
Thank you. Good seeing you too.
All right. Thank you, listeners, for joining us for another episode. Until next time.
Happy Halloween.
Bye for now.
Goodbye.
Bye.
We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie Oubliette.
Did you or your sister kill James Angelov? Oh, yeah, a couple of times.